2025, we are to do a quick revision of oral literature. Most of the students don't revise for English for sure, and there are just few we are committed that go through the necessary revision required for proper performance. Of course, maybe some because they have given up, some because they know what they think that it's easy and make an assumption. But I can assure you that there is nothing easy and there is nothing difficult. It's about you. If you are studying, for example, are you preparing for it? Because while we can look at other subjects as if they're not necessary, maybe you have decided to go the style. The current minister for education actually said that he is opting to have Kiswahili stroke English. However, the reality is that when you're going for some courses, they'll not have to opt for that. They'll go for English squarely because they understand what English means. English is an international language and it really matters in so many careers. Unlike Kiswahili, even though it is used for communication, it only applies to East Africa. So be aware of that and know that when you look around for some interviews, even for nurses, that is the reason why some cannot go abroad, because they go for interviews in English and fail. So knowing these few ideas or realities and understanding that English is also key in some courses, especially those who want to be lawyers. And again, I believe so much that if you try and balance in all subjects, you are better put than somebody who has maybe scored S in CRE, C history, and maybe they pass, maybe, let me say they just squarely go for humanities and do not do well in English or Kiswahili. So this is why I decided to do narrative revision for high school students, especially candidates 2025. Why? Because we are expecting a narrative to be set this year. If not a narrative, automatically it will be the songs. But when you look at last year's setting, what they brought was more of an oral song, though the questions were oral, were poetry. So we therefore think that it will be oral literature for you. Whether it comes as a narrative or a song, because currently we don't have the short genres set under paper 2. The reason is these short genres have been formed or rather pulled to paper 1, whereby if they want to ask you about maybe riddles or tongue twisters, they'll bring that in paper 1 question. That is question 3. Yep. So let's go ahead and revise our oral literature. Of course, earlier on, if you look at my channel, just check through, you will see the definition of oral literature, the functions, why we study oral literature, and such aspects of genres. I've discussed it under a certain, lesson. So if you go back to my channel, you see that I know most times students don't watch this because maybe currently they have programs they are focusing on, and it becomes so entertaining and they decide not to follow lessons. But when you get time, come back to this channel and watch the oral narratives, because that is what we are going to do in this lesson, and I'm hoping that 1 hour will be enough for us to cover a wide range of narratives. Now, in the year 2023, they brought a trickster narrative. And when they asked a question about classify the narrative, I have no idea why some students could not classify that simply as a trickster narrative, because of course the hare had tricked the lion and the rest of the animals into believing that the lion had stolen the bull's calf, Previously, they have also set another trickster with a crow. They used a crow and it was a crow and another, which bird was that? Yeah. And then there is a year they tasted ogre narrative, I think, and so forth and so forth. All right. When they brought in that was 2015. 2015 or 16, somewhere there. So of course we'll be going back to that if we get time too, but currently I just want to make you go through different narratives and also the general features of narratives before we get down to other businesses. All right. So of course no one will ask you about sources of oral narratives, but there's a question that currently comes where they want realistic aspects of a narrative. in relation to the current life. So when you look at narratives, they are normally collected from oral artists. Of course, oral artists are good at spinning stories, right? That is why when you go to oral performances during drama festival, you'll find people are very good at spinning narratives. They also come from group work. People can go research and they decide to come up with a narrative through classwork. Of course, we did that in university. And for those of you who are focusing to do literature in university, you will have to do such projects. Sometimes we can deliberately create them. And of course, we'll use elders to help us create them. I think currently you've heard songs which were sung in past, but we have artists who are using the same songs but creating just a little bit by twisting one thing or the other. Mystery, like organ narratives mostly come from mystery. We don't know like what lives in the forest. You see a given place and you fear. So you create stories surrounding that to make students or kids also to fear the place. Ordinary happenings. Every day we have experiences. You have been in dilemma, haven't you? You've been in situations where you've been betrayed by your friends, haven't you? So all these are sources of narratives. Now let's come to the performance of narratives. Of course, you may be asked also narratives in paper 1. Don't forget that. We have paper 2 years, but we also have paper 1. And I'll be dealing with all of them because once you perform well in paper 1 and 2, you are good to go. You just need some few marks in paper 3 and you'll score your B+ and above. All right, so let's come to performances of narratives. Of course, we know that in most communities, people used to perform narratives in the evenings at the fireplace after they have worked, all right? We also had specific events which were set aside by the community for such performances to enhance entertainment, especially after harvesting. People don't have work to do. So they could sit together for bonding, and during such moments, they narrate stories. We also had them whereby grandmothers or fathers could sit down kids and tell them about the community, right? Okay, now currently you cannot tell me the same is happening. Apart from few homes, what is happening in societies is that we learn narratives now through books. You buy a book and then read it and find narratives. Somehow, we are also learning in schools. Like during drama festivals, many teachers commit to enhance narration, right? Okay. Sometimes we also benefit from YouTube's, TikToks, or those other social media platforms, and even the radio stations. So we are using technology to learn narratives. So in case you are asked such a question, know that the media through which we learn oral narratives or perform is a bit different. Now, whom do we expect in a setting of a narrative? Of course, we expect adults. Most of them are the ones rendering or offering that rendition of a narrative to the children, or sometimes adults, giving to other adults. Like if I want to go collect narratives from the Sudanese people, I'll collect from the adults, and I'm an adult myself. So adult to adults, then we have situation of children telling other children. Once you tell your child a story, they also carry it and tell another, especially in a class setting. We've had such situations. We can also have children telling a group of adults or children, like you challenge them, tell me something about your community. Like if you go to America, when you are teaching English and literature, you don't have to be the one telling the students the stories. You tell the students to group and then come up and narrate. So as they narrate, they are narrating to a group of children in a class or adults, right? Now let's go to some roles of the audience, right? And of course, we have active audience and we have passive audience. Now, active audience take part in the narration. They sing along with the performer. They can stand and dance. Sometimes they will give some or interjections, right? Like they may show surprise, they may show excitement, such things. Whereas we have passive audience, they just keep quiet, totally quiet. They don't even try to nod. They will not sing. They will not even respond to the opening formula. They will not even respond to the end, like show that they are cheering or jeering, Yeah. So, a storyteller also needs to have some qualities for narration, and these can be tested in paper 1. A good storyteller must have the following features. 1, they have they must be very creative. Do you know, sometimes in the presence of many people, you can lose words, all right? And because you are a good narrator, you fill up the space. You don't have to wait for somebody to tell you, or have to go back looking for the sentence. So good storytellers are supposed to be very creative. Creative. You create as you move by. They are also supposed to be very sensitive to the audience. If you feel like what you are saying in specific language is embarrassing the audience, you redirect yourself. Like, I want you to go to the winning narratives in drama festivals in Kenya. And when you look at those narrators, they are supposed to be very sensitive in a manner that they are not bringing down a certain community or bringing down a certain gender or a people of a certain age. You are supposed to cover them up so that they feel comfortable with you. A good storyteller is also very keen in observing. They observe how the audience are doing. They can say, "Why are you sleeping? Did you know that when you are sleeping, the lion came?" All right? Then they wake you up. So they must be a bit of observant. Look at the audience and react based on how they do. You remember this guy who did, he did a very good narrative. I think it's almost even 12 years ago. You remember the boy from Nairobi slums? He did a very good narrative before President. That time we had Uhuru Kenyatta, the first session of leadership. And that boy made the president to laugh all the way. He actually engaged the president in the narrative, even though the narrative originally was not involving the president, you know? All right, so you are supposed to be that kind of narrator who engages the audience as you observe what they are doing. If they want to walk away, you can even tell them there is sweet, delicacies coming. So if you dare walk away, so you just say like that, but you're not looking at the specific person, but that person knows, oh, I am the one who was going, so I can sit down and listen, right? A good storyteller is supposed to be a very good actor. Remember, in narratives, we dance, we jump. Sometimes we want to, mimic. Because of that, a storyteller is supposed to be a very good actor who can dramatize, use facial expressions that communicate meaning, gestures, body language, They are supposed to also be teachers of morality. In narratives, we don't want a situation where you're telling us that stealing is right. Like you tell us in an entire narrative and end up by telling us that when students refused to eat maybe that food and walked away from the school, they were rewarded a scholarship to go. Narratives should morally teach, They morally have to teach. So you become a moral teacher. Another thing is that a good storyteller, if you decide that in your life you'll eat through narration, know various cultures. What do people from Belize believe? What about from Turkey? What about South Africa? What about Morocco? What about Cote d'Ivoire? What about America? What do they believe? So that as you come up with your narratives, they are covering all these cultures and everybody is comfortable with the context of your background. I've seen, I even started another channel, though I'm not working so hard on it. I know once these others start moving, I'll be very functional in it. And I was trying to do narratives. First, I started with African, and I think I'll be going to other cultures too, right? So, within those, sijui kwa nini huwa mna squeeze charger na ingine, I don't understand you people. So, a good storyteller, therefore, must be aware of different cultures so that you diversify in how you narrate and you cover the context that suit everybody. A good storyteller is supposed to have a good memory. A good memory. When you start a narrative, you should not start saying, oh no, I did not say this, but I think it was this. I did not mean this, but that. All right? A good storyteller is supposed to be courageous and bold. When you stand before the people, you have no room to fear. Don't have goosebumps. Let your heart not have now 360-degree beats, or maybe it's now going at negative 20 beats, so that you are freezing on stage. That should not happen to a storyteller. Now, techniques of storytelling can be set in paper 1. Which techniques do we need as storytellers? Yes? And this is asked in a lot of questions in paper 1. They ask you, for example, you are going for a narration to a certain music festival. What will you do to ensure that you perform effectively? Are you seeing? So those are techniques of storytelling when you are being asked that. Now, in this situation of storytelling, what you have to do is that you ensure you give the following answers. Number 1, dramatization. And when you are answering that, you must be specific. For example, if a narrative has been given whereby you can walk like a monkey, try to say that I'll walk swinging my tail. If it is the hare, for example, laughing at others, you say I'll be laughing as I jump around the bush. If, for example, it's an elephant who is bragging, you say I'll be tramping, or rather, moving my feet, my strong feet on the ground. All right. So dramatization is one of the aspects of narrative performance. And when you are asked in an exam, try to be specific in what you want a certain character or you as a performer to exhibit. And why would we be doing that? Dramatization maybe to make the narrative interesting, or actually put into a reality, or rather make the audience, visualize. Are you getting? So you give the specific technique, what specifically you'll do, and its importance. That is one thing the students don't do, and it really grabs marks from them. The second aspect of narration is gestures. Gestures. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean, maybe hands. All right? Gestures do with the hands. So you have to tell us, when I'm narrating this, I'll lift up my hands, maybe to carry an object. Maybe you want to throw a stone at an ogre. Or I'll raise the hands like I'm giving beads to the ogre, Or I'll raise my hands like I'm holding an axe ready to split an ogre into 2 pieces, right? Yep. The third aspect of narrative performance is facial expression. Now, most of you students will just say, I'll use facial expressions, all right? We don't want you to give such a general answer. We want a specific answer, because you know that facial expressions have different modes. Are you showing disgust? Are you showing joy? Are you showing anger? Are you showing empathy, suspicion? And these faces have different, like when I do this, I'm frowning. If I do this, there are different ways. When you do this, like something is smelling, that is scowling. Whereas when you do this, you are maybe, let's say, frowning. Then there is smiling and different other emotions. Like when you're shocked, what will your face be? Sometimes you just have to say whether you will open your eyes widely, or you will maybe narrow your eyes. There are situations where we narrow our eyes. Maybe we are straining to see. But sometimes we open up our eyes because we are angry. We want to shout at somebody, right? So you have to say, particularly the facial expression you use in a certain part of a narrative, or whether it's a song, right? And that is something that most students fail to do. Maybe I'll open up my eyes to show my surprise in the way the animal did, right? The next aspect is tonal variation. Tonal variation. Tonal variation is an aspect of narrative performance. And don't just say, I'll vary my tone, all right? When you say, I'll vary my tone, you've not been specific. You have to say whether you'll raise your tone. And I think you know the time when you have a rising intonation or falling intonation. So, for example, if you say that I'll have to raise my tone, you should be sure that maybe you are answering a yes/no question, or maybe what specifically. But most times when we are annoyed, remember, we are still performing our mother tongue, but we are now behaving like the white people. So even if you are annoyed, when you are warning somebody, you will have to lower your intonation. You will have to have a falling intonation. On the other hand, maybe when you're talking about the moment you are actually scared and something like a snake wants to swallow, you might say, maybe I had to raise my intonation as I shout out, all right? Now we have mimicry. Mimicry is different from dramatization. Dramatization is whereby you decide whether you are going to kneel as you plead, you are going to limp because of maybe something, and visually represent certain aspects. Mimicry, on the other hand, is to imitate. You are imitating a certain animal. If the hare is a kind of animal that is small, maybe you decide to speak with a very small voice. If an elephant always trumps, you can have a certain speaking in a kind of way that you are tramping. We have people who are very good at mimicry, by the way. I saw on social media a certain student, I don't know which school it was, a certain student who was able to give different voices of birds and animals. Like if you are able to do like a dog, to bark, that is, you are able to neigh, you are able to, all those. So that is what we are talking about. So I'll mimicry a certain animal, maybe a monkey, so as to make the story interesting. Okay. The next aspect is involvement of the audience. This is one of the things people forget when they are answering on how to make a narrative effective. Involving the audience. And how do we involve the audience? We involve audience by maybe singing a familiar song and making them sing along with us. We can also do that through the opening formula. We can also do that by repeating some parts, so that after a certain period they see a certain part repeating, okay? We can also ask questions. Ask questions. Do you know what happened to the hare? And they'll say no. Okay, then you continue. The involvement of audience is particularly used to capture the attention of the audience and also engage the participation of such an audience in a narration. The next aspect is costumes and decorations. Again, most times students don't talk about this. Costumes and decorations, when you're answering that, you must talk about I'll wear maybe a traditional brown clothes to show the authenticity of my narration, right? Or I'll carry a horn, a traditional horn, that will serve in producing the voice of such, okay? Or small sticks to show how they were trapping maybe animals. Are you seeing? So costumes and decorations or props are an important aspect in narration. The next thing is dramatic pause. Of course, when you are narrating, you cannot keep speaking in monologues. You are even preaching, people do break from narration. So dramatic pause is important. You can say that I'll give a dramatic pause at a specific point, maybe to allow the audience to absorb the content. Like when there is surprise, there is bad news, disbelief, heightened feelings. You as a narrator should know that that part you have to break into a dramatic pause to allow the audience to have release their tension. The next aspect is stage movement, all right? Stage movement, I hardly see students giving that. Stage movement. When you are performing a narrative, you need to move strategically and also in a relevant way so that you maintain the audience, attention of the audience. If you stick at one point, you will become a stooge. Any narrator must move around the audience and it must be relevantly, all right? The last aspect of narrative performance is use of accompaniments and musical instrument. Of course, when we are narrating and our narrative has songs, we need to also have musical accompaniments such as drums, jingles, shakers. So you decide if that narrative requires a specific one, share it and say why. All right, so I think we have finished that part of performance. We can now go to narratives. We have about seven types of narratives, guys. The first being trickster narrative. Then we have ogre or monster stories. We have explanatory or etiological narratives. We have dilemma narratives. We have mythical narratives. Then we have legendary tales, right? Now, I don't know why people used to call them why stories, but that is the only a word to help you get the etiology. But the reality is that we don't have why stories, all right? Now, let's begin by talking about The general features of narratives. This one is a common question. If a narrative will come in 2025, let's bet it will have to ask for features of a narrative, you like it or not. And before you go to those which some people consider stylistic devices, though at higher level there's nothing like that. But at lower level, some teachers consider them as stylistic devices, while others are features of narratives. Now go for the typical features that really happen to be narratives, but they are not in songs or other things like poems and what have you. Now, for example, the typical features or characteristics in narratives that we normally see each day, one is opening formula. Now, remember, not all narratives have opening formulas. Don't force. For example, we have these stories about legends. Legendary narratives hardly have opening formula. Even dilemma narratives, sometimes they don't have opening formula. But if you see a narrative beginning with once upon a time, long, long ago, or long ago, or one long time ago, that is opening formula, and it has its functions. The opening formula serves to mark the beginning of a story. Yeah. It also identifies the narrator. It calls for the attention of the audience. It indicates that we are moving from a natural world to a world of fiction. So have you got those four? Of course, that is opening formula for you. We also have closing formula in most narratives, but not all. As I've told you, an etiological narrative and not etiological, legendary narrative and dilemma narrative sometimes don't have a closing formula also. So closing formulas, of course, are marked by words such as that is the end of my story, that is how, that is why, there ends my story, such words. Now, why do we have closing formulas in narratives? We have closing formulas because they mark the end of the story. They also invite the next performer. They remove the audience from the world of fiction to the real world. They allow free participation through reflection of the audience, and they make they what else do I say? I think that is it. Yeah. The third element in narratives, though it may not always be there, is that narratives have songs. Okay, narratives contain songs. Not all of them, mark that. But if you get a narrative that has a song, that is one of the features. They contain songs, sometimes riddles or proverbs. Now, a song in a narrative has the following function. I have seen this tested many times and students don't answer it very well. Songs sometimes they break the monopoly of the narration or monotony, creating a good opportunity where the audience can participate. They also enhance plot development because they prolong the story. You might find a story very short, but a song prolongs it. They also capture the mood of the moment. Like if a narrative has death, it will bring a dirge. If a narrative has wedding, it will bring joy. Okay? Songs also create suspense in the story. Sometimes they become the part of the climax and they mark the end of a story and create that suspense. Like if you look at the story that was set in 2016, Career, the song she sang to the ogre before she was swallowed, that one creates suspense. Songs also communicate messages, especially what the narrative wants us to hear. Maybe whether we should respect the elders, whether disobedience is a vice, whether they are talking about stealing is wrong, or malice can destroy us. Yeah? Okay. Songs also help to develop the characters, just like we do in storybooks. A song can be coming there to develop a character trait of a character as being maybe brave or creative, Like in Karia's song, that song was also building Karia as a very creative person. She used to sing songs to the ogre so that the ogre doesn't swallow her at once. Songs, I think that is all about songs, right? The next character trait of narratives is that they have fantasy. They bear fantasy, and you don't use once upon a time. If you already have the answer, the narrative has opening formula. Get something else. You can say that if we read the story, we can have the story suiting any other moment, or you can no, fantasy is about some unimagined, I'm confusing fantasy and timelessness, sorry for that. So a fantasy means that a story contains some things that you cannot imagine or have never seen them happening. For example, if you see a story where a tree was dancing, a rock was talking, a spirit or a cock was laughing, yeah, that is fantasy. That is fantasy. Now, we also have a character trait of a feature of most narratives. Now, what is the role of fantasy? Fantasy is for humorous purposes, and it also serves to enhance interest, or it helps to also enhance plot development, right? Now, let's go to the next feature. Narratives are also contain personification. A lot of narratives contain personification, and this personification comes whereby you have animals or objects doing what human beings can do. I've seen a case whereby students confuse making animals do what human beings can do and making animals just do what they have to do. Or when human beings do what animals can do, you cannot say that's personification. Personification is opposite, right? Now, why do we have personification in narratives? In case they ask you, personification is meant to create humor because we see the greater potentials of animals in what they are not capable of doing. Another function of personification is to pass a moral message. Animals help us to learn more. Like you can associate yourself and learn from the hare who stole or was lazy than when they bring in a human being. Personification also helps in achieving indirect castigation. Like if we use human beings, people will be meeting people with similar names and they'll castigate them, stigmatize, Sometimes personification is there for universal role, right? Okay. The other character trait of narratives is like they are timeless. Timeless. When we talk about timeless, don't carry the same sentence of once upon a time and bring here. No. Bring another different sentence. Like you can say, when we look at the story, it does not have a specific time, or it is in the infinite past. Okay? Yeah. The other aspect that we find in narratives is that some of them have mother tongue translation, which is not common to all. We also have aspect of dialogue, though it can be considered as a style. So we have narratives where we have dialogue. Now, a common question comes on the function of dialogue. When dialogues come in a narrative, they are there to develop the plot. They are also there to build the characters within the story. They also bring realism in the story, Yeah. Another aspect of narratives is that narratives normally, they are longer than the shorter forms, right? And then they are owned and created by the society, which you cannot commonly show when you are answering in an exam, right? The other aspect in narratives is that they contain repetition, but remember, before you go to such aspects as dialogue, repetition, direct address, finish the rest first, so that in case there is any controversial discussion surrounding it, you have already sailed through. So sometimes narratives have a repetition, and that repetition is there for rhythm purposes, create humor, emphasize a certain meaning, and also to indicate a certain tone or mood. Okay? Some narratives have rhetorical questions, not all, some. And those rhetorical questions serve to engage the audience, enhance critical thinking, and build the mood in a narrative. Also, some narratives have elements of humor, You will read a narrative and you find it quite funny. Yeah. And the reason why we have humor in narratives is to break the monotony of the story, enhance realism, create interest in the audience, break from tension, and also some of the narratives have a lot of images. Yeah, like you will find a lot of images in some of the narratives, right? To create that mental picture of what is happening, humor, and also just kind of exaggerate information. All right? Narratives contain symbolism, like a stool, like you will find something representing the other, all right? Even the hair itself representing something else. Some narratives have a lot of suspense, which is not common in all, just to delay activities and create anticipation. Some narratives have a lot of proverbs and wise sayings, which is not very common, of course, for metaphorical purposes. Then narratives contain irony, and whereby we have unexpected situations coming about. For example, we might have a stepmother who wants to kill stepdaughter, only to end up killing their own daughters, right? We have most narratives, the past one, they used to have ideophones. Then we have onomatopoeia in some narratives. Then every narrative has a moral lesson. That is a common feature of narratives. But remember, when you're talking about a moral lesson, it must be universal. It must be positive. Sometimes you can use a proverb. I know that question is very common. So listen again. Moral lessons must have a positive statement. You don't say, we should not steal. We should not unite. We should not, hate each other. That one is not a moral lesson. A moral lesson should say we should unite when you are working together. We should always focus to succeed. Then they should imply consequences. Are you getting? And you must give an illustration from the story to prove what you are saying. Like if you say we must obey our parents, what happened in the story? Did we have someone who disobeyed and suffered? Show it. They must be universal. You don't say you should or I should. It is we should. All right? I hope you've got it. Then use proverbs and make sure that they are correct. Last week I was somewhere trying to coach students, and a student was saying, instead of look before you leap, I don't know. The students think. The student used think before you leap instead of look before you leap. You will not score because that is not a correct proverb. So use the correct proverb in wording as it is. Now, the narratives have economic activities, and I hope you know economic activities bring a source of income, such as fishing. You can have hunting, blacksmithing, iron smelting, selling of goods, weaving of baskets, livestock rearing, crop farming, trading. Yeah. So economic activities in a narrative are related to a particular task that brings an income. And be specific. If you know in the story we have goat farming, just use goat farming, don't say farming in general. If you see that it's horticulture, use horticulture or crop farming so that you are going specific. All right? If there is pottery, use pottery. Ornament making and trading, use that. We have social, cultural activities. Those ones include division of labor among people, mode of governance, for example, rites of passages. Yeah. We also have maybe the kind of food people eat, activities where they celebrate, like it can be body painting, it can be making of art, for fun. It can be maybe, let's say, something to do with men. Maybe they have to conduct a certain duty while women do the other. Maybe festivals like Odwira festivals, or in Japan we have certain festivals there that are conducted. You can also mention the specific activities. Political aspects also come in narration. Of course, this one is about governance, structure of leadership. We have maybe the respect adorned to men or who makes decisions in the home. Like if we have kingship, or father is the head of the family, or maybe hierarchical leadership, inheritance of leadership, council of elders who are used to settle disputes, and such things. Now let's begin with the narratives and talk about each of them. I hope the remaining 20 minutes will cover that. Now the first narratives that we have are trickster narratives. Trickster narratives are supposed to have the following features, so that when they tell you to classify, and maybe with a reason, you will find that trickster narratives always have small animals tricking big ones, and they already also have cunning animals within them. Then the bigger animals most times are foolish or gullible. Now most of those stories will have animals such as spider, which is known as Ananse in West Africa, hare or squirrel, they'll have monkey, a fly, hippopotamus, lion, elephant, crocodile, right? Monkey also comes most times as a treachery, but in some stories, monkey can be tricked and seek the help of the hare, like what was set in 2023, right? Now, tricksters, of course, the reason why they use small animals to trick the big ones is because they want to teach a moral lesson that it's not about our body size, it's about our brains. They also want to encourage children that they can make it in life even when they are small. Because many children, when they are watching these stories, they associate with the tricking animal. All right. And now the narrator wants to tell children that you can make it even when you are small. They also inspire the weak in the society. You know, a society always have the weak and the strong. So they use these small animals to prove that the small animals are now the weak ones. And so weak people should always be motivated that once in a while they can make it. All right. Now, they also want to focus on wisdom. Most times you'll find that the small animals in trickster narratives are very, very wise. They overcome the big animals because of wisdom. So the stories want to emphasize on the aspect of wisdom. Functions of trickster narratives. Why do we have trickster narratives? They want to teach us wisdom. They enlighten us on possibility of tricks surrounding us, and they want to show the virtues in community, like aspect to do with unity, hard work, and paying for one's evil. All right. We have so many examples of trickster narratives. I can't give any by now, but if you go to different KCSE papers set earlier, you will see them. I've mentioned already to you 2023, and we have 2021. Then we have 2018 or somewhere there. The career story, although it was an organ narrative, but there is a year, 2016, they set a story between the crow and the, was it the crow and the cock? That was a trickster narrative. Then 2024, they set also a trickster involving monkey, lion, and other animals. Okay. Now let's go to a different kind of narrative, explanatory or etiological narrative. Most students don't know how to write etiological, but when you pronounce the way I'm doing, it is easy for you to write etiological, or explanatory if you forget that. Now, this is the stories where many people refer to them as wise stories, but it's wrong. Never should you say wise stories. Why is only there to help you know the reason why these narratives are so. So explanatory stories tell us why some things are the way they are, all right? So what are the, if in case you have classified the story as that, of course, I'll expect you say that the story tells us why the elephant maybe trumps, or the story tells us why the tiger has patches, okay? Yeah, so features of explanatory tales, one is that they show why something is how it is. The second is that they explain aspects in the midst of life. Like they will not start from the beginning of it, but it will be already existing, and they'll tell us that something happened somewhere and the hyena began to limp. Or hare used to have a big tail, but somehow something happened, now it has a short tail. Or that the giraffe used to have a neck just like the other animals, but at some point the tiger, something happened and its neck was elongated. Okay. Now, the other character trait of or feature of an explanatory tale is that they will always have the statement why. Okay. Now, functions of explanatory tales. Explanatory tales are there to account for the features of certain animals, to legitimize phenomena, to also help us respond to questions children ask. Have you ever sat around a child that is learning nature? They'll ask you, Mama, why is this? Papa, why is this? Papa? So you answer them using the explanatory tales, all right? Now, they also offer lessons based on cultural beliefs in different societies, and they serve also to entertain the audience. Now, examples of those are so many about the tortoise, why the tortoise all has the, the broken shell, why the tiger has strips, why the lion has the, the mantle, why the ostrich snake is long, why the dog barks, why the cat purrs or stays in the kitchen, why the zebra has the black spots and white, why the donkey remained as it is, so many. Okay, now let's go to the third kind of narrative. Of course, etiological narratives were set also. I'm seeing here in my book, they said something on the zebra. Now let's just move on because I may not have time to show an example. I'll do that another lesson. We have monster or ogre tales. That was set in 2021, as I've told you. 2021, yes. Yeah. So, ogre or monster tales are tales that surround supernatural, ogre, or human beings also, but the key aspect is the ogre here. Now, what are the features of monster tales? Monster tales have personages which consist human, animal, god, and rare features that we don't see commonly. So most of them are like giants, monsters, or they'll give us something, The second character trait of or feature of monster tales is that the key character is the ogre, of course, and then most of the stories are targeting children. Then ogres often in those stories look strange. They can spit fire, the eyes, maybe one eye, one hand, one nose, The ogres most times pretend to be human beings only to change later in the story. There is also a place for salacious, and some stories are apparently directed to adults or adolescent people. Now, what are the functions of ogre narratives? Ogre narratives are there to make us avoid relying on appearance. That appearance can be deceptive. They also want to show relevance of obedience, because most children who are attacked disobey some rules. Ogre narratives are also cautioning human beings to be careful and warn them against strangers, trusting strangers. Even adults do trust strangers, They also warn us about staying away from dangerous places, because in the stories, we find most people who are attacked go to strange places. All right? Now, let's go to other narratives. Another narrative that I want us to look at is, let me open this first and check something here. Mythical stories. Mythical stories, I've not seen them set a lot, but they may bring. Who knows? Maybe 2025 they'll bring that. So mythical stories talk about the origin, the very beginning of something. Unlike what you saw in etiological narratives, mythical stories state something from the beginning. Okay? Yeah. So they'll talk about maybe floods, death, desert, life. Okay? Yeah. The features of mythical stories is that they relate closely to reality. They also refer to the past in which the existing environment was shaped, or human beings, okay? Even in the Bible, the existence of Adam and Eve, the way they state to us how they came about, that God made them, is a mythical story. Most of those stories revolve around families and children. Then mythical stories have gods in them, deities and supernatural powers, of course. They also form the basis of myth, epics, and such things within the societies. All right? Yeah. They have specialists within them and they refer to adults. Okay. Why do we have mythical stories? Mythical stories are there to explain the origin of people and phenomena. They also educate the community members about what is around them. They are used to pass time, they are used for entertainment purposes, and they keep the history of a society. I may not be able to give you this, but you have the common one among the Maasai, Maasai myth of the sun and the moon. We have Sapient myth of the origin of death, and so many others. Okay, let's go to the legendary narratives. I think that is the next. Legendary narratives. Legendary narratives are stories about extraordinary human beings. Like the story of Jesus Christ, according to me, is a legendary narrative. Features of legendary tales. One is that they have real heroes and heroines. Like when you talk about Mijikenda, they have their own thought about Mekatalili Menza. You go among the Luo, they have their own story about Luanda Magere. You come among the Luya, they have a story about Elijah wa Masinde, and such. Among the Masai, they have Orkoyot. Among the Kamba, they have a given lady there. All right. So, when you look at legendary narratives, they tell stories about real heroes and heroines in the society. They have fantastic elements, fantastic elements which are also magical, like how Jesus used to perform miracles, how Mekatalili Menza would do extraordinary stuff. They also explain history somehow, like the war between the Luo people and their neighbors, Through Luanda Magere's story, we get it. Those stories take place in a specific setting. Like when you talk about Mekatalili, they talk about Giriama place, then they come to Kisii and they take her back to her place. Luanda Magere is about Nyanza and the neighboring as they fight. Orkoyot is about the Maasai society and all that, okay? They also have a closure of the story, like they'll tell us how the legend ended, all right? Then most of those heroes are betrayed, just like Jesus was betrayed. Delilah also betrayed Samson. We have the story of Luanda Magere, who was betrayed by the wife he married from the neighboring and all that. All right. Why do we have legendary narratives? Legendary narratives are there to explain stories of heroes and heroines in society so that we understand them. They convey moral lessons such as we should learn to maybe love people who are working for us in the society for the betterment or something like that. Then we have, they also keep custody of history in a society. They entertain people, they promote virtues, and they also are used to pass time. All right. Which story haven't we talked about? Have we left any? I almost feel like we have talked about all of them, unless I've left any. Haven't I discussed the 6? Oh, dilemma. Oh, dilemma narrative. It's one of the things we normally forget a lot. Yeah, dilemma narrative is the one I had forgot. Now, dilemma narratives are stories that leave us torn between two choices, okay? Two difficult choices. Now, what are the features of dilemma narratives? Dilemma narratives, they have two difficult choices for you to pick. Like, like you are told you die now and go to heaven, or die after 10 years and go to hell. Which one will you go for? And if you are dying now to go to heaven, somebody will cut you to pieces with a very sharp panga. So choose. Which one will you choose? Don't you think it's too difficult? Okay. Now, there is also suspense in dilemma stories, and they always exaggerate aspects within them. They might also end with a question directed towards the audience. Now, why do we have dilemma narratives? They enhance critical thought. They account for choices that we have to make. They create humor, and they are there to also pass cultural aspects within communities. Now, I've never seen a story where they set a dilemma, but that is why you have to revise them. Now, I have a book. I have a good book on oral literature. and sample questions in it. This is the book. This is the book. Actually, sometimes when you show it like this, it reverses because now I'm unable to turn the camera because at some point it got elevated. But this book actually has all those notes, and it has sample questions for different years up to 2024. 2023, of course, that is when they said the last narrative. But it also covers both paper 1. This book covers both paper 1 and paper 2. And you can access it by maybe just, if you drop a comment on this video, I'll check and see that you need. But I'm going to place my M-Pesa, not my Safaricom number on my platforms, because I've seen some people want to communicate to me and they can't when there is no contact of such. I'll place my email, Gmail, as well as my number, so that in case someone wants to access me and wants the book I'm talking about, they are able to access it. Sometimes we don't place these books in bookshops because they want to really steal from us a lot of money as they sell them. And I don't blame them. It's because of KRA and all those things. So I really appreciate. I saw one person who was very vigilant here. I was unable to see your name because the camera actually had to redirect so early when I was just starting. But I'm so appreciating that you watched me from the beginning to an end. And let me just check before I end this. But I think we are done. Unless there is a question someone wants to raise on the platform. I normally give that time like 5 minutes, just in case you have a question. Huyu Troy ndiye alikuwa tu hapa from the beginning to the end. Sini sana na ama mtaki kula leo. We can as well stay. Yeah, so I've come to watch the computer just so as in case there is questions I raise them or I answer, and I'm checking. I cannot see questions anywhere. Let me see what Troy. The only person who was here is Troy for all that time talking about South Africa, Australia. I don't know why he repeats statement all the time. All the time. But I appreciate the presence anyway. I appreciate the presence. All right. So I appreciate your presence, guys. I can't see any questions on my platform. So I'm going to close this and end it until maybe later, in case I decide to do another reaction, because there is a lot of things in Nyabohanse. Mayugno has just thrown a video there, so I don't know what he has discussed. I saw Kate Sigano also, and some things surrounding Mayugno's case, and also Irumbi Brenda. So all that shenanigans may invite us to do more. But I really appreciate your presence. But we have had a very good lesson. Very good lesson. If a student was watching or will watch, they'll really benefit. Bye-bye for now. Wishing you good, all the best. They say gracias, adios. Gracias, adios.